What is up, guys? How are you guys doing? Rick Grimes for President here, bringing you another video. What you guys are going to be watching today is another review video. I do these every week, so you gotta expect it. And the review I'm doing today is on last night's episode of The Walking Dead Season 4, Episode 12, titled Still. And before I start this review, I'm just going to go ahead and put this out there and be brutally honest that last night's episode of The Walking Dead was probably one of the worst episodes I have ever seen. Probably the worst episode I've ever seen of The Walking Dead. And, whether or not you guys think that or not, I'm sorry. I don't care. If you guys thought it was the best episode ever, that's your opinion. But I could not get into the episode. Everything felt forced. The dialogue was just terrible. The acting was okay. I'm not putting anything against the actors, but the way that the script was written and the way they had to say some of the lines felt unreal to me. I couldn't believe it. The actors just they didn't sell it right, and I think it was because of the writing, the dialogue. It was just not the right type of dialogue for the characters. So I just wanted to put that out there before I go do this review. This is actually the second time I'm doing this review. I just did this review 5 minutes ago and found out that my camera screwed up 45 seconds in, so I literally talked to nothing for 10 minutes. So I'm doing this again, and I'm hoping this is going to work. So if you guys see me reaching for the camera and making sure it's still working like I'm going to do now, which it is, then you guys know why, because I don't want it to screw up again. So I'm going to make this one shorter since I just did the review 5 minutes before this and talked forever. I'm going to try to make this one really quick, so I'm going to just touch up on a couple of the main points. I'm not going to go through and give you a whole synopsis because I just did that and I don't know, I don't want to do it again. So this episode was all focused on Beth and Daryl. There was nobody else in this episode, which I thought could be cool. I thought we could get some really cool moments, but I was wrong. Right at the beginning of the episode, we see Beth and Daryl coming out of the woods and finding this car, and we find out that the car doesn't start. They end up taking a few things from the car. Then they hear some walkers, so they jump in the trunk of a car. And this is the only scene that I really enjoyed mostly in this episode, is the whole thunderstorm thing while they were in the back of the trunk, and Beth was sitting there holding a knife the whole time, and Daryl was holding his crossbow, and it was kind of a cool, stressful, suspenseful scene. So that was cool. But then after that, it kind of went downhill because Daryl and Beth end up going back into the woods, and Beth makes a fire because she found a mirror and a piece of glass, and she does this cool little crafty Girl Scout, Boy Scout fire type thing. And so she makes a fire, and Daryl goes out to hunt because they're trying to find some food. And this is a really significant part, an important part of this episode, because Daryl shoots at a squirrel, misses the squirrel, which Daryl, we know, never misses usually. And then he goes to retrieve his arrow, and we find out that the arrow is kind of broken and wilted, and they're snapping. So this is a huge part, because now we know that Daryl's arrows are getting old, and he's either going to have to find some new arrows, which is going to be hard, or he's going to have to switch to another weapon. And we all know Daryl Dixon's the crossbow-wielding maniac, So it's going to be weird if we see him, without the crossbow. So he ends up finding a snake and trapping and killing that snake, which an interesting fact is I read an article that Norman Reedus actually was talking about that snake, and the snake was real. It was an actual, I think, eastern diamondback rattlesnake, and he said the snake was real. I'm not sure if when he killed the snake, if that part was real, but he said capturing the snake, yada yada, he didn't really go into detail, but he said the snake was real, it was a real snake. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So they end up eating fried snake. I almost said fried steak, because that would be awesome if they could get some fried steak. But anyway, not fried steak, fried snake. And it was kind of an awkward, Daryl was sitting there eating and Beth was nibbling on stuff, and then she's trying to get Daryl to talk, and she ends up saying I want to go find some alcohol and get drunk. Because we all know that, she couldn't get drunk, she couldn't drink or anything before, because Herschel, her father, was an alcoholic, and then when Maggie was born, he stopped drinking and wouldn't let his kids drink, obviously. So she tells Daryl she wants to get drunk and go find some alcohol, and if he doesn't want to come with her, she's going to go by herself. So she gets up and leaves, and this was just odd. Like, I didn't understand this at all. I can understand if Beth was using this, like, alcohol thing as a way to get Daryl to get up and move somewhere, because sitting there doing nothing wasn't really helping them. But I'm going to check my camera again, make sure it's still working. Yeah, we're good. So I didn't understand this. It felt very forced and weird. So Beth goes out on her own, runs into a couple walkers, doesn't end up having to kill them because she draws them away by throwing a rock, and then Daryl comes up behind her and leads her back to the camp, and that kind of stays for a couple minutes, and then they end up finally getting up and going somewhere else. After Beth, calls Daryl a couple names and stuff like that, says that he's being a jackass and stuff like that. And they end up going to this golf course, and they see a clubhouse. So they go inside the clubhouse, and they see a bunch of dead walkers, and there's some really cool walkers in this episode. A lot of cool looking ones, the ones that were hanging, and the older lady that had like the sign that said "rich bitch" on her, which that was a weird scene too. But the whole time they're going through this clubhouse, Daryl ends up getting a golf club, which is cool because we see some golf club killing walker action. But he's like taking money and jewelry. I don't know if you guys noticed that or not, but like he's going through this clubhouse taking money and jewelry and like items that I don't know why. I don't know if he thinks he can use this stuff or what, but it didn't really come up. It was just kind of like a thing that he was doing, which was really weird. And then they end up going through the clubhouse, and Beth finally finds a closet with some wine in it. She gets the wine, but a walker ends up coming out right when she gets the wine, and she ends up having to break the wine bottle over his head and stab him with it. And so there goes her wine. And then they keep going through the clubhouse and find this the bar area, and Beth, we finally got to it. So she finds some alcohol, I think called Peach Snobs, I think it's called. And she asks Daryl if it's any good. He says no, and then he just starts throwing darts. And then she's sitting there like, well, I'm going to drink it anyway. It's the only thing I could find. And she finds all these glasses that are dirty, and then she's sitting there with the bottle, and she starts crying. The reason I think she started crying is because this isn't how she wanted her first drink to be. She didn't want it to be with dirty glasses sitting at some worn down bar, yada yada yada. She wanted it to be nice and meaningful. So she starts crying, and Daryl looks like he's getting pissed off at it. I think he feels like he's babysitting this whole episode. So he ends up going and grabbing the bottle and throwing down the bottle, breaking the bottle and saying if you're gonna have a first drink, it ain't gonna be no Peach Snobs. And he ends up leading her to a place where he notices is a moonshine distillery, which I don't know how he knew it was there or where it was. And I thought, this was going to be, we might get to see, a couple other human characters during this thing. But it wasn't. It was just, them ended up finding a place that had some moonshine, and then Beth and Daryl drinking some moonshine. And the way that Beth reacted to drinking that moonshine was terrible. When you're drinking moonshine, that stuff burns. You're not just going to drink it and then swallow it and make a little bit of a gross face and then be like, that was the most disgusting thing I've ever had. I want some more. You're going to make especially the first drink you ever had being moonshine, you're going to make a face, especially since it's been sitting there for a long time too. So that was, I don't know, that was some poor acting in my opinion on that part. So they end up drinking, and Daryl tells Beth that this place was kind of a place that he lived at, and that all they had was this junk and this there and this there. And then they end up drinking some more, and they end up playing a drinking game where Beth is asking questions, and if Daryl has done any of those questions, and he has to drink. So she's trying to get more of a backstory on Daryl, and so she's asking questions like, have you ever drank and gotten drunk and done something you've regretted? Have you ever been to jail? Yada yada yada. And Daryl starts getting emotional that Beth's asking these personal questions, and he gets mad and goes on this rampage and goes outside and starts, you know, killing this walker that they've been hearing outside. And Beth goes out and tries to stop him, and Daryl starts getting violent with her, and like is really weird, and starts like grabbing her and saying like, if you want to learn how to shoot a crossbow, and starts shooting this crossbow at this guy and pinning him up against a wall, all this other stuff. And finally Beth ends up going and stabbing him in the head, and and Daryl asks like, why'd you do that? And she's like, it's not supposed to be fun killing him. And then Daryl breaks down, this was a good scene, because Daryl breaks down finally emotionally and says, you know, maybe if I could have done something, this stuff wouldn't have happened. Like maybe Rick, Maggie, and everybody would still be alive, because he thinks they're dead. He says like, maybe your dad, talking about Herschel, would still be alive if I could have done something. The governor just rode up to our gates. Maybe if I could have done something. Like he's blaming this stuff on himself. And then Beth finally like goes up behind him and hugs him, and like it's a little emotional scene there, like, oh, it'll be okay. And then we skip to a scene where they're on the back porch at night, and I didn't really understand this, because earlier on, like I said, Beth didn't want to just sit there and do nothing. She tried to get Daryl to get up and do something, but yet they're at this house now, and they're just sitting there doing nothing, drinking moonshine. So I don't know, it was poorly scripted there. So they're sitting there, and then Daryl starts talking about a little bit of his backstory. This was kind of where we start getting some character development on Daryl. We get a little bit of information about Beth, but not much. Checking my camera real quick. We get some information on Daryl about how, like, all he did before this was he was a nobody, and he did whatever Merle wanted to do. He just hung out with his brother, and they did whatever. And then he tells, like, this little funny drunk story about this dude named Tweaker, who he ends up, you know, getting in a fight with, and then it ends up turning into a laugh fest, which was kind of, I mean, it was kind of funny at the moment, since they were drinking and he was telling a drunk story, but it just was unbelievable to me. So then Daryl says, you know, we need to get out of this place, and Beth says, we should burn it. And she makes this really weird face as she says this, and this was a weird scene. Like, I just didn't believe Beth saying that. She's kind of turned into a rebel or something this episode. I don't know. So they end up pouring moonshine all over the house and burning it. Daryl asks if Beth wants to burn it, and she says, hell yeah, and then she burns it, and then they walk away a little bit and turn around and flip the house a bird. Both of them do, and they stand there like kind of laughing, smiling as the house burns, flipping it off. And this was kind of character development and like character, you know, relationship between Beth and Daryl. Like they're starting to build like sort of not a relationship, but like a personal type relationship, not like a romance type relationship, because they think that they're, you know, going to be together for a while. You know, Beth, you know, before when they're sitting on the porch, Beth's like, you're going to miss me when I'm gone, Daryl Dixon, yada yada yada. So they think that everybody else is gone and they're never going to see anybody else again, and that they're going to be, you know, together, and they're going to have to, you know, end up getting along with each other. So, and I think that the whole burning the house type thing was Beth's best way of like taking out a little bit of emotion and aggression, but also like just kind of living it up or whatever. You know, it's a zombie apocalypse, and you can't really have fun and live it up. So I think that this was best way of like livening Beth and Daryl up, and just kind of like living it up and doing whatever. But overall, like I said, like that was the end of the episode. After they did that, like that was it. I mean, next week's episode looks good, but this one, it just, like I said, it felt forced. There was a little bit of character development, but I feel like they shouldn't have done what they did, and like they shouldn't have taken a whole hour to do that. They could have put all that stuff in and like shortened it down and put it in like 20-30 minutes, but they took a whole hour on this whole like best adventure to get drunk type thing. Like I said, it's just an odd episode. It just didn't do it for me. It was one of the worst, probably the worst episode of The Walking Dead. Everything felt forced. It was poorly written, poor dialogue, unbelievable. I don't know. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you've watched the video to this far, which I hope you guys do. I hope you guys, you know, continue. I know these videos run a little long, but I hope you guys watch them to the end. And so tell me what you guys thought. Leave a like if you liked the video. If you didn't, refresh, watch it again, and then like it if you liked it the second time. So yeah, let me know what you guys thought. Like I said, and like I didn't like it. That's really all I have to say. I can't really think of anything else to say. Like usually I sit here and give like an interesting review and like am interactive, but this episode just didn't do it for me. I just sat there and was just kind of like and complaining throughout the whole episode. So I can't really give a good review on something that I didn't take in as much as the other episodes. So I apologize for that, but I think next week's review is going to be a lot better because the episode's going to be a lot better. But we'll see. So as always, guys, thank you for watching, and I will talk to you guys next Sunday.